Honchos,
talked
right?
about, because the head Honchos was before my solo, and then Wade Out. You did something after Wade Out, didn't you?
No, well, solos, and that's it. So I tried to segue into.
I'm saying before your solo. What did you do right before your solo?
No, I was just Wade Out.
What decided? What?
It was Wade Out. Oh, it was Wade Out. How it? No, it was if these trees.
Are you
came,
already recording, bro?
Yeah.
Okay.
So look. So essentially, where we left off last time was that, and it's cool because he's an editor. But where we left off last time was the work ethic, and how a lot of people, just in general in Redwood City, and you guys could probably speak to this a lot. A lot of guys will like. That's why I love Spitta. That's why I love Knuckles, because Knuckles really held down a section of the city when Zak was a little dormant. Zak's never been dormant. Zak's always worked. But there are times like I was out of the game for a minute, but people like Knuckles, people like Spitta, like kept it going. Shout out to Six Filthy Entertainment, they were doing it too. But there is, and I'm sure it's like this in other cities too. Like people just like they're kind of halftime rappers, or they mess around, but they're not really trying to go the distance with it. That's why I always speak so highly of Zak, is because the consistency of the work. So I'll go into my own issue with that, and then we'll talk about that and how it worked out with you.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
That can kind of catapult that. What made you want to do a solo after doing the alleyway stuff?
So, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about like just that MCing, and everyone here can speak to it. MCing, there's very few completely background guys everyone wants to be the point guard. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to get the rock. Everyone wants to, and I was like, as I was working and I was hearing back a lot of the not criticism, but just like people saying you could have done this better, you could have done this better. A lot of it was I was getting back was like, and I love my guys. I love my U.S. soldiers. I love my guys. But a lot of people are like, this dude's not as talented. I'm sure you used to get people in your like, why are you messing with this guy, or why are you messing with that guy?
I'll keep it real, I still do.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. Why are you messing with Vince? No, I don't mess with you. No, but essentially, yeah, I would get people like, why are you working with this guy? And it's like a lot of it was street connections. It's like these were guys from my neighborhood, and then add into that the as sure you could speak to this too, the political drama within. Forget about with opposing factions, or the ops as they would say now, within your own faction. Mm-hmm. There was always, and nobody, I don't know what it is, and I feel like we could talk for hours about like how it is in the Latin community, about like nobody wants to see somebody else doing it. Like everyone wants to be the man. So I there was a lot of factors, and I said, dude, I want to do this. I got a lot of knowledge. I'm the one paying all the money. I'm going to run with it. I'm making connections with other people, and I got very strategic about putting out These Trees Could Talk, which I think was monumental for the city. I don't want to be remiss in saying that I think it was the thing that really kicked it all off. I think it was the beginning of, and that's even though it was my album, I think it was the thing that kicked it off. I think it was if there was no If These Trees Could Talk, there would have been no Shortstop. And forward, there would have been no Spitta and whatnot. It was.
You gotta throw Boja in that mix, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Boja does definitely.
Boja.
Just because of the whole presentation.
And we just talked about it too. Yeah. Like I wouldn't have even gone there if Boja didn't do what he did. Exactly. Which is why when we're all sitting around talking about Bobo, I give him like when we did the other interview. He was going around going, who I am? But I pump my boy like that because that's quite a distinction. Mm-hmm. And you're right. But yeah, right. So every little piece of the chain, but like that's how I felt in that space of time.
I know.
How big was the gap between Boja's album and yours?
Like the solo, like 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Because as soon as I dropped Wade Out. And I felt a little rushed. I was like, I need to go right back with everything I learned. And I still listen to If These Trees Could Talk and say, this is why I recorded a professional studio now. I am great behind the boards. And you can, if you listen sonically from that to Studio Fix, you hear a huge difference in the mix quality. And that's when I started bringing people in to mix like yourself and Hat Tricks and everything. But If These Trees Could Talk was a great ride because I learned so much in that album that I was able to pass on to my brother and other people. About like just getting out there and finding, there's this dude in Vallejo that's big, Young Drew. I found him this number on the back of this CD. I'm gonna call it. Andre Nicotina. All these people working these things, pulling up to dark, dusty hoods, like all over, doing shows in Richmond. That was the last album where I used the N-word. And it wasn't because anybody shook me or I went anywhere. I just realized how stupid it was that I was using this word. And, you know, in our neighborhood, we were all talking this way, but, you know, ultimately I figured out I needed to go a different lane. But it was so much fun, so much energy. And I knew that the city had talent. I knew that people were looking at us. We were on BART, we were on 911 Sickness, we had our own message board, which was taking off. It was second to only East Cocoa, whether it be for hate. You know, and I really felt like I brought a lot of that hate into to the city and stuff because I engaged. I think a lot of people told me that when I dropped, like, hey, you know, like, kind of let that stuff have thick skin, and it is very thick now. When I do my art, if anyone has criticism, I can really take it. But I was young, I was punk rock, I was like ready to go at any time. You guys know me, I mean, as nice as I was with letting people in, and he could speak to it too, I was always ready to drop the hat to like put it all on the line and like, you know, earn some more, another story to tell somebody at the bar, you know, like, so, but I knew that there was, what happened with, and correct me if I'm wrong, what happened with, and I want to talk about Head Honchos, so we're going to go straight to that real quick. But something happened after Wait Out and Head Honchos dropped. I feel like without anyone being too like, you know, too like full of themselves, the cream started to rise to the top. The real MCs started to really step forward, the real workers, because it's more than just the talent. Because if it was just talent, I always thought like, Nacho Water, I thought the Waterman was really dope from the group, from Head Honchos, but work ethic is important too. And wanting to continue, and they did all keep dropping, but nobody was like Zak, right? And it's like, so that's what I started to feel. I started to feel like our collective groups, we started to push forward because we were the ones with the work ethic and ultimately the talent. We did skip over a major thing. I want to talk a little bit, and I'll bring you guys into it too. Talk to me a little bit about Head Honchos, running the show. That was such a big album in Redwood City hip hop history. One thing for its affiliations and how it connected to the gang culture in Redwood City. Secondly, for the same reason, I think you guys had a lot to prove. There were some deaths, you know, you know, from Juan and everything, and then other people had dropped. We had dropped, OG had dropped, and I think you guys had a lot to say on that album. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, it was like the post Hurtful Circle era, where it was like the ones that still wanted to like really do something and put some money into it and like actually put some, you know, put a push into it. It was like me, Notch, the two Notches, because it was Young Notch and Top Notch, and then my brother. And the cool thing about it was like we were basically all from like different hoods too. It was like my brother was from Little Mex, I was from Vera, Notch was from Rollison, and Young Notch was like Palm Ave over there, you know what I mean, region area. And like we just all clicked well, and the Head Honchos name actually came from a song off of the Hurtful Circle that me and Notch did, me and Young Notch did. And so yeah, man, that was when I went out and got like better equipment, better mic, had a place to record, you know what I mean? And I think that's part of what you were saying about like us taking it to the next level, was we were the ones that were actually like letting people come to our house to record and like setting it up and like, you know what I mean? Like, man, I was neglecting my kid, bro, to like record and stuff like that. Not that it's a good thing.
No,
but,
totally. But I
mean?
remember
like
my
that,
marriage was messed up for all that stuff that we were doing too. But that's what I mean too. Things got strategic. You started to look at it. We started to look at it less about like, let's get some beer, let's get some dank, a couple bags, and let's all sit around and write. To like, okay, you know, when are we gonna drop? Like, who's gonna do the cover? You know, like who should we feature, if anybody, on this? Like, what songs are we gonna make? Like, we started to, you get a taste of seeing your CD in a warehouse or, you know, someplace, Camelot, and you're like, I want this more. So I saw how much more professional you guys were being. I went to the studio at the garage. I think I dropped something with you guys once, I think. But one thing I always will say was really awesome about you guys is that you still have that grimy mentality. Like, I think like the mic, I'm not sure if the mic was on a stand. I think the mic was being hung from something.
That was when we still were on the 4-track, yeah. So
yeah, it was like a 4-track mic hanging like over something.
So I'll tell you, raw. We were recording in the garage, and the first roommates we had on Velota. That was when I first moved out of mom's house and like got my own place. I mean, I had my own place in Hayward with my cousin, but in Redwood, when I had my son, we moved into a spot on Velota, and it was a triplex, and like. We moved in with Dominic and his kid's mom at the time. And then like I remember they ended up moving out, so then I had a 2-bedroom house. So when he was living there, that's Notch's cousin too. That's young Notch's cousin. So like Notch would always be there visiting him, and then we'd do music and stuff. But we would always be in the garage just like smoking and drinking and making music. The whole crew was there, and then when he ended up moving out, I moved all my stuff up to his old room. And so I had like a room instead of just like, and I couldn't smoke in the house and all that because I had my son in there. So it was like, I think that kind of pushed us to be a little more professional. That's when I bought like some better equipment. We stopped using the 4-track. We started using that digital Tascam 8-track and like a better mic and stuff. And that's what we recorded the Head Honchos on. That was the difference basically between like the Hercal Circle and the Head Honchos is like the recording quality stepped up too.
I'll say one thing that's really neat about that too is the various paths that thing went down, and you guys can speak to it coming to Studio 214 and everything, is that because of your affiliation and connection to that real structured hip hop, the early elements of hip hop, DJing, stuff like that, I remember coming to you guys and you guys were very hardware focused, whereas our group of people were very software focused. So we were recording in Cubase, recording in Digital Performer, recording, and you guys were very much like the beat machines were the Dr. Bosses, like this, that. There was a lot of chords going around. I remember
that was a lot of Notch right there, because Notch like had this drum machine, and he had like his sampler, and he had the turntable, and like he was so stuck on that from doing stuff with the Factor back in the day in Waukeno, that like it took him a lot. It was like trying to take candy from a kid, like, you know what I mean? You're like, man, you gotta try this new stuff, and he wouldn't try it. He was like, nah, I make my stuff better on this. And then I started buying some more gear, and he would kind of start messing with it, and he got to the point where he was messing with it a little bit more.
For the people listening that don't know what we're talking about, so we're talking about DJ Top Notch. He is essentially like the Manny Fresh or the Dr. Dre. I think that his sound is the signature Redwood sound. He's the biggest producer that the city's ever had. I've enjoyed working with him. He's worked with him extensively. He stays in Sacramento now. He'll always have my love and admiration. That's the dog right there. I wish I would do an album solely produced by him in a heartbeat. I don't know. And it was because of him. He was one of the people, but there's a lot of other factors that played into us connecting. Before we get into us connecting, can we talk a little bit about how you got to short stopping? And because we talked running the show. Let's get into what brought you from running the show to your solo CD. Why make that choice then?
It was the same thing. It was basically like Head Honchos was us as a crew, but then I kind of felt like I wanted to see what I could do on my own. It wasn't nothing against them. It was just like, okay, I'm still putting in most of the money and buying this equipment and like putting everybody on, and no love lost to my dudes, but like I want to see what I could do next level. You know what I mean?
This is exactly what I was going through.
And like another thing that I can't forget to mention is the stuff we did with JB the Original. Yeah. So my brother was locked up with Justin Sims, aka JB the Original, and this is a cool story right here. Is my brother was locked up basically the whole time I was recording with Waukeno. Waukeno never met my brother.
Wow.
And he was already like Hercal Circle. My brother was already like writing raps in jail, like ready to get out and drop for the Hercal Circle.
And he was in Youth Authority though, right? He wasn't in
CYA. He was in Glenwood twice, which they don't really do. And then he got a day pass from Glenwood the second time and never went back.
And they said he knew he was going to prison.
So he was locked up like almost every single time my brother was locked up, whether it be Juvenile Hall, Glenwood, or CYA. He was in all of those spots with JB. And and JB's from San Francisco. He's
That's
from
what's
Lakeview.
up.
And so like they were just like always in the same spot, so they clicked, you know what I mean? And JB rapped, and so my brother would always be telling me about, yeah, this dude JB, man, when I get out, I'm gonna bring him through, and we're gonna do some music. And we just like super clicked, man, because him and my brother were already tight, and then we got super tight. And like he would come to Redwood City just to record. Man, him and Notch did a gang of stuff together, and me and him ended up doing an album, and that was the one we got Killer Keys on. Rest in peace, Killer Keys. And like, man, that was a classic album too. That's another underground classic from Redwood right there. But that kind of, that was like something that kicked it off. But really, shortstopping would have never happened without Paul Testa. Because Paul Testa introduced me to TC.
See, that's where I was trying to go with it.
Yeah,
so Testa put out Boja, and then I know there was from what I remember from the how I went, there was supposed to be like they were supposed to do it again. They were going to run it back, and somehow that work ethic thing kind of crept in again. I think Boja was kind of tucked in with a friend of ours, Autumn. He was dating a girl. He was a little bit into that and a little bit into the life. And then somehow you came into the fold where he started to see that talent in you. Is that correct?
I honestly don't even. I think I probably met Paul Testa at Seegers too, and like I didn't even know his role in the whole Boja thing. But I remember he was putting out music, and I think I met him. We just started chopping it up, and then he lived actually. So I lived on Velota, and then I ended up moving like right across the street to. Funny enough, I think it was St. Francis. It was like an extension. So if you cross Jefferson, I think it's still St. Francis on that side. It's something weird, I forget. But it was like a little dead end where Heathen, do you know that dude Heathen? That Manny Borgen and everything.
Manny Borgen.
Yeah, he lived right there too. But anyway, he lived like on a couple streets down. I didn't even know, like he lived in this little spot with his parents that he had this room turned in. He had like a big ass like Control 24 type of deal in there. He had a booth in the closet. It was like a room that barely had enough room for all this stuff, but it was professional.
I heard something like that.
So I would go over there after well, that was a little bit after shortstopping too. But when I met Paul Testa, he was telling me about TC. So Paul Testa brought Boja to TC, and that's why that Boja CD is mostly produced. I think it might be all produced by TC.
Yeah, I think it was all
and
TC.
He's also the one that got like the features for Boja because TC is tied in with like Totally Insane,
for sure.
Nicotine.
Everyone knows TC is like a factor in all this.
So that's like.
And he shouted you out. Just a little thing. He mentioned your name when he was on on Dregs with the history of the Bay. I was watching. I was like, oh, Zak.
I know a lot of people told me that. That was crazy.
Can I ask you guys a question? So you guys had that in common that you both bet on yourselves. You bet on yourselves to take a solo chance, and it was a chance because you didn't know, if it was going to work out or not. I'm assuming that the teams didn't take that negatively.
My team most definitely took it negatively. Yeah, it was probably one of the things, the beginning of what kind of ended the quote unquote gang or whatever. I mean, we lived on as brothers in different ways and kept our little handshakes and little things and whatever. But as far as music, we never really worked together again on a lot of levels.
To be fair, and honest, I don't really think too many of those guys did music after that. And if they did, it wasn't like on a serious level where they put out like a solo.
I can't think of anybody from my crew that ever. I mean, I had friends that Creed did stuff with Tech Nine. A lot of people went on to do. Most people just kind of like faded out. Yeah. Whereas I think your group of friends continued on 14 caliber features, different things. So. Before we go too far, I think we're not talking. One thing we didn't say is I want to talk really quick on a few other little quick people from Redwood City. We didn't talk about Red Light, so let's really just real quick. Red Light Records. You guys remember the young group of guys? They would eventually go off in different directions. Shout out to Cheese. Cheese is doing his thing in Sacramento. Really proud of him. Dash. Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit about Dash and Crooked because that was a big thing in Redwood City history too. And that was, am I wrong? Was that a little bit around shortstopping when we started to hear little rumblings about Crooked, or was that a few years ago?
No, that was around. That actually, there was a song on the JB and Zak1 album.
That he was on, or you were? Oh, okay, yeah, okay, right on. Okay, so Red Light. I'll go into Red Light. I remember seeing Red Light because first I remember these guys from Red Light where they were going on the alleyway message board and they were kind of furthering they're like. Then this happens a lot in Redwood City where a lot of guys are like, oh, if you want to hear real Redwood City rap, if you don't want to listen to this stuff. And so there was that, and I remember going to the website and going, wow, I need to learn how to make a website, because their website was, and now if you would see it now, you would think like, what is this? But back then it was pictures of everyone in the group with a bio. It was like they were the X-Men or something. It was hilarious, but they were doing their thing. I never even heard one song from these guys. I've never heard a Red Light song to this day. I just know that they were huge, and there are still people from whatever, the same way they are with us. I've recently, in the last 4 months, had people tell me like, oh, that Red Light album was so good. I ended up getting into it physically with a couple people from there. That's why me and Cheese weren't super good for a while. We were able to squash that. That's my bro now. I am beyond elated that because the same way I've talked about Malachi and yourself, I believe Dash to be one of the bigger factors in the history of our city's hip hop.